leaving Korea, I had the ceremonial chairs that I packed in my household goods, and they never quite made it back to you know, they just never quite made it back. I wanted to make sure that I had it. My commander got her guide on framed, but I wanted mine with the stick and the whole thing. So that's what we got. That's what
No,
we
it
got.
means a lot.
It's we
That means a lot. You know.
big time. We were talking earlier, just a second ago, about how like you realize you didn't have a support staff anymore recently. One of the things that happens in the army early on is, if nothing else, you got a stinger. It is a stinger team chief. You got a gunner. You got a helper. You got somebody, a teammate that you both can do things together and accomplish a mission. When you retire, you look around and you're like, I got no more helpers, man. I'm on my own. I got to do this myself, and it's tough, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I still got a helper. I mean, I got my son, 16, and my best battle buddy, my wife, so, but neither of them are very technologically savvy. I always tell my son I feel bad for him because I'm still active until January 1st is my official retirement date, but I'm on my terminal leave now. But I tell my son, I say, it's really bad for him to be in the position of having a command sergeant major dad that has no soldiers. So, he gets 100% of my love, yeah, 100% of my love, Will, you know what I mean? So he's having room inspections every morning.
Hey, like, oh no, 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 no! Come on, come on. What the funny thing though, right, is our love, the power of our love as a leader. You can look at it as loving on your soldiers when you're taking care of them, right? When you're trying to impart on a young soldier the importance of just vacuuming his room once a week, and picking up the trash on the floor and throwing it out. In the old days, in the communal barracks, if you didn't clean your stuff up, your buddies would take care of it, right? They'd give you a blanket party in the middle of the night, and you learn to shape up. But when everybody's got their own space these days, one of the things that you find is the only time you end up in a soldier's room is for a formal inspection or something like that. And it's in Fort Bragg, they just moved a bunch of soldiers out of the Smoke Bomb Hill barracks and stuff up there because the conditions and stuff. Like you were like me, you saw soldiers change over time, right? So, but soldiers fundamentally were the same, right? They just wanted leadership and direction and motivation, right?
Absolutely. Now, 30 years, you see some stuff. And, I look at just uniforms. I'm on my third set of PT uniforms, my fourth dress uniform, and, being the guy that I am, last year when the greens came out, the AGSU's Army Green Service uniform, what people love to call the pink and greens, I was like, man, $500, bud. But, I went out and bought them because I wanted to lead the way. I wore it like 5 times. So I guess it was worth $100 each generation. But things have changed. This is a different army, and one thing that, to be quite frank with you, I hear a lot of people, out there talking disparagingly about our military, and I find it funny. Our military, our army is just as good as it's always been. Things change. The way that we train people changes. Some of that stuff needs to change. Like you just made that mention about back in the days, the blanket parties, right? That stuff needed to change. The E4 mafia, that stuff needed to go away, right? I particularly didn't like the fact when I was a young soldier, even though I knew I messed up, and I didn't let it happen very often, but, you'd go through it, your NCO, your squad leader would find one thing, unzipped or unbuttoned, and then all of a sudden your stuff's flying out your window down onto the parade field, right? That stuff has to change, but people, I keep on hearing people out there say, man, if we go to war, it's going to be bad. I'm telling you, if you actually like paying attention to what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, newsflash, we train the Ukrainians, right? Every country in the world is facing the same difficulties we're having with people paying too much attention to digital media, playing games, and not living the same healthy lifestyles. Look, everybody has it, all right? But our military is still better in every way, shape, form. And I like to go back to what you're talking about, like the Stingers. Our Stingers are out there are shellacking the Russians' aircraft. I mean, they're handing it to them, and that's a great feeling. Seeing our Stinger missiles at war taking down stuff that was intended to take down.
It's wild to think how much as warriors we want to get in the fight. It's scary after I was in a couple situations at that testosterone level that drives you to want to do your job. It's like practicing football all year and never getting to play in the game. But oh boy, when the game is coming up, don't you get excited, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. So I was kind of
Yeah,
thinking about.
yeah.
I joined in 1992, and about 1994, we had a bunch of Cuban refugees that left Cuba, and they put them into Panama. We had the Cuban refugee camps there. Turned kind of ugly. They had some riots, and stuff, and some of our soldiers and Marines got hurt out there. But that was like my closest thing to combat, even though it was not combat. It was a humanitarian effort, right? Until 2008, when I was, at that time, General Underhill, called me up, and him and Sergeant Major Clem brought me in the office here at Fort Bliss and said, "Hey, we're moving 108th Brigade from Fort Bliss to Fort Bragg, and I knew that was going to turn out how that was going to turn out because when we moved, then 3-4 became part of officially part of 108th Brigade, right? And the flagpole was going up. So I was the most loved man in 3-4 ADAR for about 6 months. I mean, they loved me, right? Just a bunch of paratrooper love out there. Best of times though, right? Yeah, this is great.
Oh yeah. So tell me, about Private Jacobitz. Were you? I mean, obviously you were a good private, right? You don't have 7 Article 15s and 3 AWOLs, right?
Well, I did get one Article 15, summary back in the day. Look, everybody out there, you join the Army, you try to do the best you can, and sometimes you just make some dumb mistakes, and that's okay. I used to go around telling all the soldiers in 32nd, hey, look, I'm not perfect, I got an Article 15. I regret it. It was kind of a weird situation where we were actually at JRTC and Jungle Operations Training Center doing the Jungle Lights Fighter School, and my squad got finished all the tasks first, so the rest of the squads had to go out and finish up all their lanes. So the first one was like, hey, clean the barracks, clean the latrine, pack all the duffel bags in the 5-ton, right? And then you guys head back early. Well, when I was cleaning the latrine, back in the day, some of the older folks out there remember this, but the big thing back then was the Gerber Gator. Remember the Gerber Gator was like a knife. It had like a plastic, everybody had one, right? This is before e-tools or multipliers, right? We carried a pair of pliers and a knife with us, and that's what we did our work with. Well, it was one of those knives up there, and I didn't think anything about it. I put it in my pocket, and I was like, next week on Tuesday, I'll just ask everybody in the barracks whose this was. Well, my squad leader found it, and he recommended me to get an Article 15 for misappropriation. And his thing was, I should have just given it to him. But it was a life learning lesson, right? And it was okay because we have to learn how to face adversity. And our leaders back then, even though I still to this day would never have done that to another soldier, I would have probably believed him. At that time, I was like not even living in the barracks, so I put it on the desk. You have one desk, right? 4 wall lockers, 4 beds, because it was the 4-man rooms, and I just put it on top, and then I was at that time just got married to my wife, and we were living in an apartment above a grocery store in downtown Colon, Panama, right? And when I came back, it was obvious. I'm like, if I wanted to take it, I probably would have taken it to my apartment. But needless to say, it happened, right? And just face adversity. Nobody's perfect, The other thing I was always telling soldiers when I go around the AOR is like, hey, I go to behavioral health, and there's nothing wrong with it. As a matter of fact, in my mind, I think it's a strong thing, And it always boggles my mind as I go around talking to soldiers out there, and they're like, "Oh, there's this, there's negative connotations, there's stigmas to go into behavioral health." And I said, "There's none. And if there's somebody out there that has that, then you need to email me or call me, because I need to have a talk with that leader, right? Because we're just losing too many people. We're losing too many of our soldiers. These all these soldiers out here, just, man, I tell you, 3.5 years being a 32nd AADC as a CSM, I lost way too many soldiers to suicide, and it just boggles my mind. And so one thing I tell all the leaders out there, we have to get out. We have to make sure that our soldiers are getting the help that they need, right? And we cannot be obstacles in the way of those young troopers.
It's a very difficult thing. I had a soldier commit suicide when I was a first sergeant, and suicide is a tough thing. We all look inward, and we all think that we could have done better at every level, no matter where we're at in that relationship, and we take that, at heart. Are there things that you found as a leader over time that was helpful to you that you were able to talk to soldiers about their mental health?
Well, what? Will, I always just I tried to talk to engage every soldier I could, and especially as the higher that you get up, I think the more important that is. And I think we underestimate just asking a soldier how they're doing. And if a soldier came by and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" They're like, "Oh, I'm okay." Then then I'm stopping everything. I'm gonna go late to a meeting. I want to have a conversation. Why is it just okay? Because that's not normal, right? Even on our worst days, most soldiers are like, "It's a great day. It's great to be a soldier." Hoo hoo, right? So it's the contact. It's about being present. It's about it's really about what you said. Our soldiers are our kids, right? In some ways and manners. And I know some people think that's negative. I used to think they were my brothers and sisters, right? Until I'm almost 50 years old, and now everybody in my formation is like 30 years younger than me. They're not my brothers and sisters anymore. They're more like my sons and daughters, right? And so that helped out a lot. One thing I always told my NCOs, I said, if all the NCOs could do three things right, three things very well. And I said the first one was, I want you to lead by personal example, right? Second thing is train to the standard. And the third thing is be present and do inspections. Go check your soldiers' rooms in the morning, more of like a welfare check. Just knock on the door, make sure that they're okay, right? Look at their room, And so it's being engaged and just being present, and that's what makes the difference out there. But unfortunately, it is a complicated situation because you can have all the leaders doing all the right things. I never prescribed to this thing of like, hey, if we run this down the rabbit hole, do like a fatality review board, we're going to find out that one leader in that chain of command didn't know that this guy was taking, Motrin or something, right? They're, like, for the most part, all the leaders out there, the vast majority are they're doing the best that they can, but we just need to continue to, maintain contact with our soldiers.
So tell me where Jerry. So first off, tell me your name, your full name, and then where are you from?
Right. So my name's Jerry. Middle name's Ellis Jacobitz. A lot of my friends call me Jake. I tell people I don't want to be called Sergeant Major anymore. Just call me Jake or Jerry or whatever the heck you want to call me. So I grew up. I was born in South Sioux City, Iowa, and was moved shortly thereafter to a little town in Nebraska called Henderson, Nebraska. Town about 1,000 people. Graduating class was 24 kids, young adults. Funny story about that town. Henderson, Nebraska is actually the majority of the people there are Mennonite. So I don't know if you know what Mennonite or not, but they were the more modern Mennonites. They dressed in normal clothes, and everything, but they're pacifists, right? So when I went to do my selective service card, when I turned 18, my dad, took me down there and he's like, you will do a selective service card. Every single one of the cards had a big red stamp on it that said conscientious objector. So if you go back and you look at my selective service card, Jerry Jacobitz is a conscientious objector. I always kind of thought that was funny.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really cool. So it was almost like that's just the way it was. When you filled out your card, the lady behind the thing stamped it, conscientious objector, because that was the culture of where you were at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. That's great. So, what was it like to be, you growing up? Were you like when you ran the foot races, were you fast? Did you throw the football far? Did you do math real good? Did you chase the girls around and try to kiss them during recess? What? Tell
Well,
me
this is
about
recorded.
little
This is
Jake.
recorded. I don't want my wife to hear about the chasing the girls around and kissing them. I grew up in, like I said, small town Nebraska. So we, played sports. That's what we did. It was football, it was basketball, it was baseball. Track, lifting weights. We'd be out behind our house. We had this basketball goal. We'd be playing, horse or pig or whatever. It was just a lot of physical activity. And during the summer times, I'd work at my friends' family's farms most of the time. Did summer labor. Which taught me a lot about life because waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, going out and irrigating the corn, or feeding thousands of chickens or hundreds and hundreds of hogs and cattle. It taught you to be disciplined, and it taught you about that people rely upon you, and that's also what team sports did for me too. I was never very good at anything. I was not as great. I couldn't throw the ball to save my life. Still can't. I'm right-handed, but I throw like I'm throwing with my left hand. But I just got in every game. I just wanted to be there. I was always, it's the guy that kind of Rudy, stand by the coach. It's like, come on, put me in, just give me a couple of plays, and I had great coaches growing up, and they always made sure that we all lettered, you know. So I told you my graduating class was 24 kids. In my high school, in my whole school, K through 12 was like 360 kids, but on our football team, there was 64 boys that played on that team. So dang near every single male in the school played football. It's just a way of life there, right?
Oh yeah. So what, like, as a kid, what did you dream of growing up? Did you want to be Superman or a fireman or a soldier or an accountant? What did little Jake want to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I grew up. My grandparents served in World War II. One was in the Navy, and the other one was a combat engineer. And all my uncles were Vietnam vets. So I always had this. I kind of always knew I was going to serve. I didn't know what I was going to serve, what I was going to do when I decided to serve. But I definitely knew that I was only going to be like 3 or 4 year thing. Like I wasn't jump in the army, do my thing for my country, kind of respect my grandparents, and that was it. I was done. And I actually had a plan to. I wanted to get out and go to college and be an archaeologist, man, of all things. So didn't make it there, you know. Yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I mean, who didn't, right?
Right, right. Wear the cool hats, run from the balls and the dinosaurs chasing you and the snakes and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was it that caught your attention about, things in high school? Where was your focus in high school? What was around you? Did you have brothers, sisters? Were your parents involved in school? What position did you play on the football team? Tell me that stuff.
Well, so my mom was the high school science teacher. She taught chemistry and biology and pretty much everything science. And so she was a big influence on my life. Obviously, not the best thing in the world to have in such a small school. Your mom be in the same building as her, because if I did anything wrong, my mom knew right afterwards, right? Because the teacher would walk down there and be like, what your son just did, So that was always fun. But so I did a lot of stuff with science. I did science fairs for 4 years. Um, like I said, we played a lot of sports. We did a lot of work. Um, fun thing to do in my town was after the football games, or sometimes the weekends, we go out to the middle of the fields out there and have a big bonfire, and everything associated with that stuff. Little bit of drinking going on, some of that classy Miller Lite being passed around and stuff. But other than that, it was just a good town. It was, it was like 5 churches in my town. It was Beaverville, like everybody's grass was cut. There was no junk in the yards. It was, I grew up, I grew up pretty well after the age of 10. So a lot of people don't know about me is I was adopted at age 10. So my parents, my mom and dad, Kathy and Jerry, could not have kids. So they adopted 3 sets of siblings. So my older brother and sister were twins, John and Debbie, and then myself and my brother, biological brother, TJ, and then Michelle and Michael, who were the youngest kids. And, you just can't, I can't express, how amazing of parents that I had, and I got this chance because I grew up before I was, grew up very poor. Like I said, I lived in Sioux City, South Dakota, or Sioux City, Nebraska, right next to the bridge that went over the Missouri River. It was not the best place. My biological parents weren't like abusive or anything like that. But they just never could. They never had two dimes to rub together. They just never made any money. So they made the best choice they could at the time. No hard feelings. Talk to them today. But yeah.
So this family, your new parents, adopted 6 kids.
6. Yep.
Oh my gosh, my heart is just full. It's just exploding with full. So explain to me your new mom and dad. Tell me about that. That's blowing my mind.
Yeah. No, they were great. I mean, I didn't have a lot of discipline before then. Like I said, my biological parents were not abusive in any way, shape, or form. They were actually, it wasn't like they neglected us, but there wasn't a lot of rules, right? But when I came into this new family, very religious family, there was some sets of rules that were relatively, when you're a young kid, it's tough to change when you're 10 years old, but they did the best they could for all of us. Like I said, my mom, she was her passion was really in chemistry. She was a fantastic chemistry teacher. My dad, he was an editor at a small printing press in the town that they had. They did very well for themselves. And they were great people. We had some really fantastic traditions that we did. They always had this one thing I remember very distinctly. They had this one red plate, and on the plate it said on the outside, it said, "You are special." And anytime that you did something good, like you got to have that plate. And and so I went out and bought one. I have one for my kids now, even though they're pretty much all grown up. Yeah.
We did the same thing in our family. Our tradition as with our children growing up. Ginger and I did when we were raising our children. So yeah, it's neat. I'm just blown away. Okay, that at 10 years old, all of a sudden you get a new life, right?
Yeah.
You get a ticket out of whatever, right?
Mhm.
What was it like finding out, we're going to get a new mom and dad? I mean, I can just imagine the 6 of you twirling around in circles,
Yeah.
doing cartwheels and, on the floor. Just can't even imagine being adopted. That blows my mind.
So I didn't see my older brothers and sister get adopted. They were already there for like a year or two before my brother and myself were adopted, and we're the middle ones. So my brother's about 4 years younger than me. You're young. It's tough, right? We went through the foster agency. We had some people that wanted to adopt us that were very abusive physically, and so you're always kind of apprehensive and guarded when you're young. My kind of role was I kind of had to be the protector for my brother, and so it's kind of you're excited, right? That old adage where it says expect the hope for the best but expect the worst. So it wasn't like jumping around, although it became that way very quickly. Once we all kind of settled in, we got our own rooms, and it really was. It gave me a whole new life. And on top of that, I have like 4 grandparents. You know what I mean? So it was good come holiday season. And they let us stay in contact. with our grandparents and our aunts and uncles and stuff like that. So yeah, they're my mom and dad are saints, particularly my mom. She passed away 2014 when I was in Qatar, and as the ops sergeant major for 31st Brigade. It was really tough, but I know she's in a better place, and she had a whole bunch of health problems, so she doesn't have that pain anymore. But yeah, she was a miracle worker.
Amen. Amen. So, what was it like becoming a sergeant in the Army? Do you remember those times, like going to PLDC and looking around, and all of a sudden getting yelled at for somebody that somebody else did or didn't do? I mean, it's weird, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. So first of all, just becoming a soldier was crazy for me. So I very rarely did I have more than a couple handful of people, dozen people around me at any given time. Now they shoved me in this room. Well, back at the in processing station there at Fort Benning. It was 11 Bravo. They dump us all out. There's it's like 9 o'clock at night, right? And there's like 500 soldiers in their brown t-shirts and their brown underwear, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Somebody had gotten in trouble, so they made everybody come out, and they're sitting on the lawn, and we're driving a bus through, and I was like, holy hell, what did I get myself into, right? And then they literally put you in that barber's chair, they spun you around, you didn't have any hair, and it was, so it was the first time that I ever met like anybody that was another ethnicity than just Caucasian white people. My whole town was, Caucasians. We had 2 kids that were adopted Korean kids, but that was pretty much my whole, and for all intents and purposes, we all had the same culture, no matter, what the skin color was. So that was crazy, right? There was a point in time, this is one of my funniest stories I always like to tell, but, during basic training, we're at, well, actually, it's 06, so it was one stop. So we didn't have the basic training in AIT. We just had 18 weeks of fun. But like first day, they were smoking us, running us up and down the starships there that just newly built back then. They just moved from Sand Hill down to this new starship kind of concept. So they're running us up and down. We couldn't do anything right. We're getting smoked. I'm like, man, this is it. I don't know if I'm gonna make this stuff right. It was just sweating, and all that goodness, the sand, all the wood chips from the smoke, from getting smoked out in the pits and stuff. And finally, they let us go up and they teach us how to do our beds. And then they say, okay, anybody that wants to get out, stand outside of our door, right? So I'm like, I want to go home, right? So the first guy goes, and I think I was like second or third in line. I can't remember. Everything kind of blurs, right? And they take this first guy in, and they're like slam the door, and they're breaking stuff in there, and this kid's like screaming. And I just went back to my bunk with everybody else, right? We all just kind of walked back. So, it's like, and then that poor kid, man, they made him go all the way through OSIT, and then they chaptered him out at the last day. Funny, but as far as being a sergeant, I look, those, NCOs, when you're a young private, if you're not in awe of your NCO and how much knowledge they had, then you're probably not, that NCO is probably not a good NCO. And whenever I looked at my, guys like my Staff Sergeant Jimmy Smith, who was my first or second squad leader in the Army, Ernie Jordan, who was my corporal, I looked at these gentlemen, these leaders with like reverence. I was like, man, I'm never going to be as good as they are, right? But I'm going to try. And so I remember, going to PLDC, back in the day, sure, you went through the same thing, primary leadership development course for 30 days. And, it wasn't tough. It was a little tough, but it wasn't anything spectacularly tough. But I remember getting promoted, and I just had switched over I just transitioned from the infantry to the air defense, right? And I just remember being out in formation in front of the whole battalion, and my wife was there to pin me, and my daughter. I had just had my oldest daughter then, and the battalion sergeant major was Sergeant Major Sotomayor. I don't know if you know Sergeant Major Sotomayor or not. He was a 32nd CSM. He's a legend in his own right and place, right? And after my wife pinned me, he's like, "You got to kiss her and seal the deal." And I'm like, because in the infantry, you didn't show affection in uniform, right? That was a no-no, right? It was like the old school, kind of concepts and stuff. But so my wife gave me the kiss, and it's and I just went out and tried to do as good of stuff as I could. Just be the best leader for my soldiers.
You talked about a couple of names there. Tell me about some of your mentors. Who was it that you looked to at times for guidance and assistance? Did you have folks that you identified as, that person's my mentor,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I always had a rule of three, right? So you always had to have three. I always had to have three mentors. So one mentor that was in the Army that was doing something at the same level as I was. Probably not in the same unit though. And then the second mentor that was not in air defense, not doing what I was doing, but still in the Army. And then third was somebody that was either retired or somebody that had no experience in the military, right? So I guess four is pretty much like, and at different times in your career, those people become different mentors. So I have one mentor out there that I tell you though, the reason why I decided to stay in the air defense and stay in the Army, period, because I was in 1998, 1999, right around there. I was pretty much done. When I came into air defense at that point in time, Fort Bliss, there were some problems with leadership out there. I mean, some serious problems, and it was kind of getting underneath my skin. And I didn't think as a sergeant I was making much of a difference. But I had this guy. His name was Frank Coda. I don't know if you know who Frank Coda is or not. Retired as a sergeant major, old SHORAD Bubba. But he was that saving grace for me, So I was gonna. I'd already applied with Border Patrol, had passed all the tests, and I had received the FedEx ferry letter. They called the FedEx ferry letter saying, your post will be, and it was right here in El Paso, Texas. I wasn't really excited about that. I wanted to go to Canada or something, but kind of pay the dues, I guess. But Frank pulled me aside. I was talking a lot of crap about leaders, right? And we're driving out and we're getting ready to set up the first 249 range here in Fort Bliss, and nobody knew how to use 249. Of course, as an infantry guy, I carried that thing around for a while. So we went out there and we're setting it up, and Frank pulls me out behind the van, right? And he's like, "Hey, look, I heard you talking all that crap about leaders and air defense and all that stuff." And he told me, he's like, if you're just going to be negative and that's all you're going to do, you're not going to be part of the solution, you're part of the problem, then get the hell out of the Army. He said, but if you want to stay in, if you want to make this better, re-enlist. But he said, whatever you do, stop talking shit about something that I love, right? And that made a lot of sense to me, right? And he was he was great. He was just a fantastic leader, exactly what we needed. It was the SHORAD guy coming in. I understood his mentality as an infantry guy much better. And I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so when I joined as a 14 Tango, probably not the best decision that I've ever made, but it became the best decision because I just then I have a lot of respect and love. And as soon as I changed my perspective on that, right, and really looked at what it took to get a Patriot battery, right, this small city of just junk, right, with the most advanced weapon system in the free world, right, and moved out to the desert, right. And I was sitting there one day, and I was probably a platoon sergeant at the time, and I was like watching them lay in, and I was thinking to myself, man, if this is extremely complicated stuff, you have to have like 32 soldiers doing everything exactly right, and that's not counting the RSOB going out and setting in that site. But everybody's got to be right. If one soldier flips the wrong dang switch, the whole system will, And I kind of thought about that as an infantry guy. I was sitting out there in an L-shaped ambush, in the jungles of Panama, and it's day 3, and everybody on that line was asleep except for the M60 gunner. Like, they were all sleeping. Because as soon as that lieutenant tapped that M60 gunner on his foot when the enemy moved center mass through and that 60 gun started throwing rounds down range, everybody woke up, engaged your targets, and then, you moved out, right? If you do that in air defense, a bunch of people are going to die if you're asleep at the wheel. So, I've always thought, it kind of hit me one day. I was like, wow, try to tell as many soldiers that as possible. Be very proud of what you do because it is such a needed weapon system out there. But we can talk about that a little later. But Frank
So
Coder's
what enticed you to leave the infantry?
my
What
wife.
enticed you to leave the infantry to come to air defense?
My wife, she's like, you're done with this stuff, So, infantry is great. I loved it, the camaraderie. So I had 3 of the soldiers that I worked with in Panama. They came to my retirement. We've kept contact over 30 years. I mean, that band of brothers, that brotherhood will never be broken, right? These are the guys you call in the middle of the night, and they're gonna come and help you out. But just I had a series of like injuries, and nothing life threatening or anything like that. I think the last straw was I went to Belize, and I came back from Belize, and I had this like lesion on my arm, and I didn't think anything of it. It was just a little whatever. It was bleeding and stuff, but it was going to go away. Enough Motrin, enough water, you can cure anything, right? And I was like 20, so I'm Superman. Nothing bothers me, but it kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So finally, my wife's like, "Go to the doctor," But back then, it was, it wasn't like now, right? Yeah, I had to go to my squad lead, my team leader, and be like, "Hey, I need to go to sick call," and then you had to go to squad leader, and then you had to go to platoon sergeant. You had to like fight your case to go to sick call. Those days, right? It was insane, and so I didn't want to deal with it, but I finally did, and I was like, "Hey, I got this thing going on me," and then my squad leader, my team leader, my platoon sergeant, they're smoking me because I waited too long. And then finally, they get me down to the hospital, sick call, and the PA's like, "Go to the hospital, man." And we'll finally get there, and I was just walking through the hall. There was another guy that had one on his face, right? And this epidural-urologist, I think that's not the right word, the skin doctor, right? He's like, "Hey, I know exactly what that is. That's leishmaniasis, and you guys have to go to Walter Reed right now." So 72 hours later, we're on a plane to go to Walter Reed, and it's like leishmaniasis. We have cutaneous leishmaniasis, and it's like a skin. It eats the skin, and then later goes into your glands, and then can later kill you, through your organs and stuff like that. So we get up there, and they pumped us with like 36 injections of this drug called Penistan. It was not fun. It was like your body was on fire every day. And then when I got back from that, my wife's like, "You know what? You're either going to get out of the Army or you're going to try something else." So went down to the re-enlistment NCO, and the career counselors. And back then they had that all MOS book, it was like that thick, right? It was like a huge dictionary and flip through, and they had the dot matrix screens, and they said, "Okay, these are the MOSs available to you." And the one was 14 Tango. So I looked at it and I was like, all right, so they have like a recon element, right? And they work with computers. And the heaviest thing, they have like a 2-man lift for 100 pounds. I said, shoot, I could lift 100 pounds by myself, but 2-man lift, 100 pounds, 50 feet. It made it sound like it was like infantry guys with computers. And I was like, that's my job, totally not there. And my battalion CSM, Sergeant Major Rockow, who later became Special Forces Command Sergeant Major, he's walking by. He's like, "Hey, Corporal, come here." It's like, "Yes, Sergeant Major." He's like, "Did you re-enlist for air defense?" It's like, "Yeah." He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, 14 Tango. And he's like, "Oh man, Rocket Man." So every time I saw him, he would sing Rocket Man as I walked past him every damn time.
It's really interesting to think about how they enticed us with these MOSs and what it looks like on paper versus what it is in reality. Now, I don't want to take anything away from a 14 Tango forever. All right. It's a very needed MOS. It's wonderful. They do a great job, but it's not accurately portrayed on paper as to what you really do, I don't think.
No, absolutely. But there's like you said, there is a very needed MOS, and they are, the 14 Tangos out there. Got to give them a lot of love. They call them the launcher dogs. They're the ones. They really do everything. I mean, they go out and they do the RSOP and they set up the site and they got perimeter security, and you have to put up the 14 Echoes tents because they don't know how to put up the tent. Yeah, you know what though? It's like I was, over the last 3 years when I was 32nd CSM, the one thing that I wanted to drive into the Army was that air defense soldiers are warfighters, right? They are warfighters. We're a combat MOS, right? And so 3.5 years ago, when General Coward, or actually General Spillman, so it was 4 years ago. General Spillman, he dusted off roving sands that we used to do in the 90s and early 2000s. And we did our first iteration out there, put like 3 battalions and the brigade headquarters and ashore at a Stinger platoon, and it was not beautiful, it was ugly. We lost a lot of warfighting skills, and then COVID hit, and we weren't able to do it for a year, and we were able to knock it out again this last year. So we went 2 years without being able to do it. And but I tell you, the 3 iterations that we've done it so far, man, soldiers just getting so much better at it. It just warms your heart when you're out there and you're looking at those 14 tangos and the 92 Golfs, the Cooks out there on the 50 cals, and they've got the range card filled out, and they're out there. It was awesome. Matter of fact, we had Brigadier General Taylor, who is the commanding general of NTC National Training Center, came out and observed roving sands this last time. So we had him on the helicopter. It was General Stewart, myself, and General Taylor. And he's like, one thing I can't get these people to do when they come to NTC is to dig in. He's like, they don't want to dig in anymore. They think it's archaic. And I said, hey, sir, we're taking it to a Stinger position. Now, I guarantee they're going to be dug in, right? And he's like, oh, Sergeant Major, I'll believe it when I see it. But we get there, and the kid, these soldiers had it. I mean, it was good. I mean, they needed a little bit of work on it, but they had overhead cover, they had concealment, they had primary and alternate firing areas. They had their Stinger missile down in a low area, the Stinger fighter vehicle down, and Humvee down in the low area, so you could barely see it from the road. I mean, it was great, And General Taylor said, he's like, hey, look, I had to go all the way from California to Fort Bliss, Texas, to an air defense, exercise to see what right looks like, and coined those kids, great. And then he put it on his Facebook and stuff, and it's those days, like those micro moments when you're just so, you're very proud to be an air defender. And I think at times we as air defenders, we give each other a bad name. We talk a lot of crap about ourselves, right? But I see the exact opposite. I think that air defense is, provenly is the most needed fighting force in the United States military right now, right?
So one of the things that I think that would be really interesting to do is to have somebody try to explain a Stinger ambush, right? What we're trying to do with a Stinger team, right? Think about it, right? We had a doctrine where we would go and interdict an aircraft in advance of it coming into our area of operation, and we would use intelligence, we would use our mobility assets to get us places, and we would insert Stinger teams on mountaintops in advance of the enemy to kill one aircraft, maybe 2 aircraft. We would take 2 Stinger missiles up there, and you would hide out like snipers. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and this is doctrine that we would do, right? Look, there's nobody in the military, in my opinion, that's less trained but more willing to go and do whatever our nation calls an air defender, and the most deployed MOSs in the world. We are constantly looking at the sky, constantly, right? So how many deployments were you on?
Oh, well, so I was deployed for 7 years total.
Right? Oh my God.
Long time. Not as much as some people, though. I mean, it's a blessing, and not always to the same places, right? So, you said at the beginning, you want to play in the football game, but there's that long time. So I didn't get to go and actually deploy till 2007, I think. Initially in OIF, I was a PLDC instructor at Fort Bliss, Texas, and Sergeant Major Rowland was the commandant, and everybody that knows Sergeant Major Rowland knows you don't go up to him and say, hey, I want to quit, right? Right? You grab you by
right. Don't even. Yeah, I kill you.
So when they did send me forward to be the 108th Brigade First Sergeant forward in Bragg, and after I got done with that, I had an opportunity to go down to 3-4, but I talked to Sergeant Major Clem at the time and Colonel Underhill, General Underhill now, and asked them, hey, can I do this MIT thing, this military instructor training, Iraqi training teams? And they kind of looked at me like it was crazy. I was like, hey, coach, put me in. I want to play, right? And so, went to Fort Riley, Kansas, Camp Funston, and did, 5 months of pretty intense training. It was really, really good. By that time, it was very well developed, I think. From speaking Arabic, we did, the entire time language classes. We got to fire every weapon system out there, including like all the Russian weapon systems, and had a lot of special forces instructors and the whole 9 yards. It was awesome. And then, went downrange and was able to do 12 months as a sergeant first class promotable, right? On my team, I was the 240 Bravo gunner as a sergeant first class, so I got to be an infantry soldier for about a year and a half, right? And that was a highlight. And then after that, came back, was first sergeant for 32nd, and then went to Sergeant Major's Academy, deployed 31st to Qatar, and that's when my mom passed away. Came back from that, so we got back in July. In August, I had moved my family from Fort Sill to JBLM, was in the great 5-5 battalion, the Dragon Slayers down in JBLM. And, we were dusting off the Sea Rams again, so we could take them out, and we deployed them to Afghanistan. So I did a 9-month tour in Qatar, came back for like 4 months, redeployed for another 9 months with 5-5. We came back from that, and they're like, oh, you know what? We need to open Iraq up again. So 3 months after that, we deployed again for another couple months. And then went to 31st Brigade a year later, redeployed back down to Qatar again, and then 32nd, it's pretty much deployed for, almost a year, but it was, it's different because it was a lot of TDY and stuff. But, when everything was kind of ramping up and with Iran, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but 2020, when we had 50% of our air defense force downrange, General Coward at the time, General Clem Coward, he went out and he basically stayed there for a year, and I would come back and forth. We made a decision that he wanted me to kind of focus a little more on the rear. So, I tell my wife, I said, I should have just waited until I became a sergeant major because I was going to get some damn deployments in. They just got me at the end of the time. I did a couple to Bahrain, and we did did a tour to Honduras, did a tour to Belize back in the day. Those were fun for a couple of months, but yeah, a few months.
Tell me about meeting your wife.
All right. So I like to tell a story, right? My wife's probably going to kill me when she hears this, but, I lovingly refer to her. I said, one day I was walking through the jungle and I saw this woman out there, and she had like a coconut bra on and a grass skirt. And I said, hey, if you marry me, I'll teach you what polyester is. That's kind of our inside joke, So she's probably going to beat me up about that. But I actually met my wife. She was living in a town right outside we were at Fort Davis in Panama, and she lived in Cologne, Panama. And one of my friends was dating this girl, and she was trying to hook me up with like these different girls and stuff. And finally, they just weren't meeting the standard, And so last one, she's like, well, I don't have any more friends left, but my sister was a friend of another girl whose sister is, lives right around the block. And so, she went over there, and my wife decided to come out and meet a gringo in the alleyway of Panama. Probably not the smartest idea in the world for a woman. And it was just, it was one of those things where everything clicked. And, she's been my best friend and battle buddy, ever since then, partner in crime, if you will.
That is awesome. All right. So what is the worst thing that y'all got involved together and can tell about? If there's something that like y'all partnered in crime to do that like you could like even share with us a little bit?
Oh man, that's tough. We're pretty boring people, really.
That's most of us, right?
I don't know.
Well, we'll let that one pass. Tell me, brag on your children for a minute.
Yeah. So so I have three children. My oldest one is 27, and she's married to a soldier. Which I told her not to do, of course, right? I told her three things. I said, don't marry a soldier, and if you marry a soldier, don't let it be infantry, and if it's infantry, don't let it be enlisted, right? So she goes out and she marries all that. Plus, he's like airborne, and was in the recon unit, And I was like, baby, do you not listen to me at all? But yeah, she just she's graduated for being a dental technician, and she 2 years ago she gave me one of this shining light in my life, my grandson Daniel, who's a 2 year old. I call him Hurricane Daniel because he loves Grandpa, right? So come into the house and he doesn't want anything to do with anybody except for Grandpa. So he runs right to me, he gives me a big hug. We have our moment, and then he wants me to put him down. And as soon as I put him down, he goes and proceeds to go to every room and take everything off the shelf and put it on the floor. Take everything out of the drawers and put it on the floor. The kid's he's a terror, but he's awesome terror.
So is that the name you chose, Grandpa? Because that's the name I chose. I was like, all the names out there, I'm like, I want to be Grandpa.
Yeah, I want to be Grandpa. That's when I grew up. That was what everybody called their grandparents, right? So I wanted to be Grandpa.
That's awesome.
Everybody else can have the cute names and stuff. Yeah, and then my middle child, Jody, she's actually living up in Lacey, Washington. She decided to stay there her senior year of high school. So Jeanette and I supported her. So she wanted to finish high school for the last 3 years in the same high school instead of moving. And I get it, right? We ask incredibly a lot from our kids in the military, right? I mean, they have the toughest job in my mind. And so she is a talented and gifted singer. Actually, she's a fantastic singer. She's doing some things on that, but right now she's kind of at an impasse. She went to college for a few years, decided that wasn't her thing, but she's just she's living the Jody life, is what I like to call it, and she's making money, doing odd jobs, and she's just happy, right? So she had a boyfriend, her boyfriend and their dog. They've been together for about 3 years now, and they're just happy, and they come down to see us all the time. I always love getting her over here so she can sing some songs because she's got an amazing voice. And then I got my 6-year-old son, who I lovingly refer to as my Neanderthal. Like most 16-year-old boys, he's like the slowest mammal on the face of the earth, right? But he's built like a tank, man. This kid, he's like an oak tree. I don't know if he's gonna be coming home pretty soon or not, but he's about 5'8". And the other day, he went out and he did his max bench. So he max benched on 270 and deadlifted, what was it, 300 and some pounds, just effortlessly. He's just awesome. So he doesn't want to play football. He stopped playing football this year, which concerned me a little bit. But he's a wrestler, so he's out there doing wrestler stuff. He's doing great. He's getting great grades and everything like that. And he gets a benefit from having his dad home and doing room inspections every day. So there you go.
Hey, I wouldn't play football these days. There's no way you get me out there playing American football these days. There's too many head injuries and junk and stuff. And so I applaud him for doing wrestling and stuff. I think that's great. I think that's great. Tell me about, explain your spirituality to me.
Well, don't be a negative influence, okay? I'm trying to get my son to play football. I always find it funny when an airborne jump master says, "Oh, there's too many head injuries out there." All right, so we'll just leave it at that.
Look, hey, I've had head injuries. I
always find it funny.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your spirituality. Tell me about those long road marches and those nights and the memorial services and the different things that cause you to, because there's no atheists in foxholes. Is there something that keeps you going, late at night when there's tough times?
Yeah, I'm super spiritual. My wife and I, we have a great relationship with God. We always try to keep him in our lives as much as because he's got to be in your life anyways, right? he's going to be there. You might as well react to it positively. But yeah, I have, we go to, obviously we go to church, we pray, every night together. Um, and it was important for us to build that foundation for our kids. I, you know, we always say, no matter how tough times it is out there, that God has always gotten us through. And I truly believe that, if you leave it in his hands, and you got to be proactive, right? You can't just sleep on the couch and expect him to dump buckets of money onto you. But you just trust. You got to trust in his design and his will. Um, I grew up in like I said, a very small town. Everybody was Christian, Mennonite Christians or just Christians, and that was just part of our life, right? Um, it was part of my growing up and my life experiences. Just going to church. Yeah, it's super important, right?
So tell me about a soldier or a group of soldiers or several soldiers maybe that you mentored and you're proud of them and what they've done. Are there superstars that you identified and was able to help and are proud of where they're at and where they've taken themselves?
Oh my God, there's so many, right? There's so many of these, and it's not, obviously there's mentorship there. I don't give myself a lot of credit for it. There's just there's all kinds of great soldiers out there. Just before before we started kicking this off, I got a text from a young soldier that's over in Korea right now. He used to work in my SGS. His name's Timothy Mummert, Sergeant Timothy Mummert, and he started off and he was 92 Alpha, and no, he was 42 Alpha, and he worked in G1, and this kid was just a beast, right? Super athletic, good kid all around, and I talked him into going out and being a 14 papa, because I was like, man, you're wasting your talent here pushing papers, but you need to be out there with warfighters. And so he's out in Korea. He just texted me, saying thank you. He's got his follow-on assignment. He's going to go to 244 in Fort Campbell, and we'll work on getting him to airborne school and all that good stuff, so he can go do some time in the be audacious down there in 3-4 in Echo Battery. But there's lots of them. Gosh, so many out there. We sit here all day long and talk about this. There's JC Alvarado, who just graduated from Sergeant Major's Academy. That was one of my platoon sergeants when I was a first sergeant. There's, and I don't know if you know Jason Abatua, but kid, another soldier. He was one of my soldiers when I was a first sergeant. He was young, E4. Just going out there killing it. He won like the FORSCOM Soldier of the Year, won 18th Airborne Corps Soldier of the Year. This kid is a beast. It's funny because when I met him, he was about as big as his pin, right? Now he's like all muscular, huge, right, and stuff. And he just graduated Sergeant Major Academy, and him and his lovely wife Tasha's down in Germany right now. And it was so I mean the list goes on and on and on. I'm not gonna sit here and talk about it all day long, because I know inevitably I'm gonna leave some people out. But there's so many great soldiers out there.
Right. One of the interesting things, so I joined in 87 and you joined in 92. Like Burnley joined in 93.
Right.
We watched a culture where the command sergeant major used to be what we thought was an old guy that was decrepit, and we couldn't do what everybody else could do. And we watched that needle turn so that the youth and the mobility of the command sergeant major in the battalion went down from it just got younger. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I think it got better. We picked some really good leaders in our air defense branch to be command sergeant majors. Tell me about your peers. Tell me about the group that you worked with. Like I got a picture with you and Burnley and Foley, and there's Dodson that's out there. I mean, there's just a group of you guys and gals, Heather Smith,
Oh yeah.
just amazing leaders at every level. Tell me about your contemporaries and the relationships that you had through that. Did you have any remarkable relationships through that?
I
Something
mean,
that you would be willing to talk about?
so first of all, I count all those guys not just as peers but as friends. And I'm gonna tell you, there's never been a time that I know of in air defense or there was where the sergeant majors were closer, tighter, working for and with each other. Throughout this time, you talk about great mentor. One of my all-time longest mentors besides Frank Coda is John Wayne Foley. Man, I've known him since early 2000s, Germany. He asked me to be his platoon sergeant. That guy is just, he's a legend. And I know he's all, shy and everything. He won't never say that about himself. But what a great leader! But all of them, Dotson, Burnley, Macri, John Carlo out there, just some fantastic sergeant majors. And there was never a point in time, Eric McRae, I like to call him Superman, out there doing great things. He's working for the Department of Labor, I think, or VA right now. All these guys are just phenomenal, and I was honored to be, in that group of leaders. I don't know if I was up to their caliber at times. They were fantastic, and we were all sharing stuff. I'll tell you, back in the day, right when we kind of closed down the Air Defense Center, it was kind of this weird time. And I remember sitting in. I'm not going to say who was there, but it was a VTC, and it was the regimental sergeant major, and the 32nd sergeant major, and the 94th sergeant major at the time, and there was like, the regimental sergeant major was like, I'm regimental sergeant major, and the other sergeant major was like, yeah, but I outrank all of you because I have more time in, and it was like, and I'm sitting there. I was the first one at the time. I was like, right, but we don't have that, The toughest times that we had, a couple years ago in air defense and continue to have, with all the turmoil, the turnover, the back-to-back deployments. I mean, there are battalions out there right now literally going on their third and fourth back-to-back rotation of 9 months. And some of those units were in Afghanistan. Some we patrioted in Iraq. We had all this stuff out there going on. And 32nd has 75% of all the air defense, and about 70. Depends on who you talk to. I'm going to say 75. If anybody wants to challenge me on that, they come over to my house. We'll drink a beer and talk about it. Okay. But during that time frame, incredibly difficult times. Incredibly difficult. The Army, they asked us to do a pulse of the force. It didn't come out as, it came out exactly the way I thought it would after all this deployments and stuff was going on. But I could call Gray, Sergeant Major Gray up, or Sergeant Major Dawson. The team just came together. And even though it was mostly my force, these guys shouldered the burdens out there, and we attacked this challenge, right? And we got some really positive results. The soldiers, we got extra pay for them if they go past 9 months. Just all kinds of a lot of stuff's kind of still getting pushed out, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But those, I would not have been able to do it without them. Steve Burnley especially. He was always just what a fantastic person, right? Every time I call Steve, he always gives me his honest opinion, right, on everything. All of them do. And and at the end of time, talking to Steve Burnley, the last thing he'll say is, "Hey, Jake, it's too easy. It's too easy." And I was like, "Maybe for you, brother." So yeah, they're just great, and the future's bright, and we got some up and coming like superstars out there. There was a while where we didn't have, for a couple of reasons out there, we didn't have a lot of sergeant majors. They were self-selecting themselves for retirement, right? And so we had this gap out there, and now we're able to get. Matter of fact, I was only supposed to do 2.5 years with 32nd, but I got extended for next year just because there wasn't a lot on the backside. And the CG at the time really wanted me to stay. But yeah, the quality of leaders we have out there, those guys they're amazing. Yeah.
Tell me about the officer corps that you were around. Was there Was there officers that helped you and mentored you and led you? I know that. Look, talking about Underhill and different, Clem, different names that you've already,
Oh yeah.
just broken down. Tell me about those officers.
I mean, there's it's like everybody else out there. There's good and bad ones, but I always thought that we were blessed in air defense. We have some phenomenal general officers. And every one of them have a little bit different flavor to them. A little bit of different things. Everybody focuses on a little bit of different stuff. But I've been incredibly blessed to work with some amazing officers in the air defense. Most recently, I want to brag up on my battle buddy. I call him Sir Charles. We all know him as Colonel Branson, right? But Charles Branson, Silver Star winner, Objective Jenkins. I didn't really get to work with him a lot before I went to 32nd, but he was my DCO for the majority of the time that I was there. And that guy is a hero. And if the one thing the Army got wrong was not making Colonel Branson a general. That he's a war fighter through and through, but he just cares about people. So yeah, Colonel Branson. I was blessed with some of the best. Like I had Lieutenant Colonel B.J. Herman at one of his 5.5 Command Sergeant. I mean, fantastic. Judson Gillette, Colonel Gillette, who just got done his time at 31st Brigade. I had Colonel Janice Chen, right? The hardest working officer I probably have ever met in my life. It's a funny story. She told me one time when I first got there, she did our counseling. She's like, Sergeant Major, you're never going to outwork me. I was like, I'm good with that. I'm going home at 1800 every night. So, and then I had Lisa Bartell, another fantastic officer. Hopefully, she gets an opportunity to become a general officer. And then, General Coward and General Stewart. I mean, just amazing leaders. Pretty phenomenal experience. But I mean, all the way through. I mean, God, I can't. There's so many of them out there that have made an impact, not only on me but just our branch and our soldiers. It's been, yeah. I'm just kind of at loss because there's so many names that come to my mind right now. The General Underhills. I mean, just working with General Underhill. Have you ever met a soldier that looked more like a soldier than General Underhill? You know what I mean?
He's an Adonis. He's an Adonis, and his beautiful wife and their whole family are amazing. He's so freaking smart.
Oh yeah.
And nice.
Yep.
Nice. And one of the interesting things, and you have it too. You have it. So please don't think that I'm saying anything, but there's certain leaders that lift you when you're with them. There's about being with certain leaders, and Underhill is definitely one of them. You're one of them. When I'm around you, when I'm around Heather Smith, when I'm around Steve Burnley, Foley, Dodson, do you realize Foley, Dodson, me, and Burnley were all in the same ANOC class together? I love that. That was a great time, man. Way back in the day. Yeah, way back in the day. And I am our air defense branch and the people that we were able to grow in it are just absolutely amazing folks. And of course we had the folks that were leading us, right? We had the Sergeant Major Roland that you would never let down, or you knew that you were going to be crushed and buried behind the Connex somewhere,
Yeah, so Roland has, Sergeant Major Clem and Roland, as a young Sergeant First Class and Staff Sergeant, learned so much from him. Man, and Roland, I wasn't really afraid of crushing Roland or getting crushed by Roland because there was no way possible I was going to crush him. I always felt with Sergeant Major Roland, one thing I always wanted to imitate and build in my formation was the power of the non-commissioned officer in any organization he was an NCO. I mean, you walked around with pride, right? And things just were done right. And he just wouldn't accept anything but the standard, right? From his leaders out there. And just, It was tough. I'm telling you, it was tough working for Sergeant Major Rowland, and I'm a masochist, right? Because he was my commandant of PLDC, and then I was supposed to go to 11 Brigade and go to 343, or I think it was 343, Sergeant Major, or 143, Sergeant Major Clem. But John Wayne Foley just had left the academy. He was a first sergeant. He came back and he's like, "Hey, I got this launch platoon sergeant. Just doesn't get it, man." And he's like, "Jake, I need you, man. I can't. These guys can't table 8, And I was like, "Man, if you're 14 Tango and you can't table 8, there's some challenges there, right?" So I went up and I went to see Sergeant Major Rowland, who was at that time the 108th Brigade Command Sergeant Major, and I said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, I want to work for John Wayne Foley down in it was Gulf." Echo Battery, one of the two. It was just as we went to the A&D concept. And he's like, "Hey, you're academy instructor. You get what you want. You know that, hero?" And then, so I was still in the academy at the time. So I went back. I was in processing soldiers for a class, and Sergeant Major Stanley Davis, the post command sergeant major, comes in. He's like, stops the in processing. So everybody get out, right? He's like, "Jake, why don't you want to go Sergeant Major Clem's battalion? They're like the best trained, best unit out there, and all that stuff." And I was like, "Sergeant Major, you just told me why I don't need to go there, right? You don't want to put me there. That'd be a waste of time for me and that unit. It's too easy." And, he got all mad and left. But, one thing about Roland was nobody told Roland no. You know what I mean? So, yeah, what a fantastic time, man. I still like the meme out there. You seen the meme of him?
When we start talking about
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you ever seen it?
You got to send it to me.
Yeah, I'll have to find it. But it's like
no
Roland with his sleeves rolled up, and he had those giant arms, and he's like, and it said, if you're an air defender and this picture doesn't strike fear in your heart, you're not an old school air defender.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, dude. So he would, I don't know, Sergeant Major Rowland would strike fear in the world. But I just had a thought. Could you imagine Rowland showing up with fluffy BDUs and not starched down? Could you just imagine him in a set of fluffy field BDUs that just got pulled out of the duffel bag? I mean, it just would not ever happen. To this day, he wears, I mean, whatever Rowland wears, I'm telling you, it's got to be straight. Right. I mean, it's got to be.
I talked to him about 5 months ago. I talked to him about 5 months ago, and every time I talk to him, I really enjoy it now because, he laughs now and he jokes, and I'm like, first time he started joking around with me, I was like, "Who are you, man? What happened to," right? But yeah, no, Roland was.
You gotta share his stuff with me. I gotta interview him. I want to interview him. I don't have any connection with him, but I would love to get an interview with him. Tell me, like, if you could go back to any particular year, time and place, and redo or relive an assignment or a year or a time in your life, where are you going? Where are you going to go back to?
It'd be 2008, right after I got back from Iraq, and I had the opportunity to be the Alpha Battery 3-4 First Sergeant, and I had my battery commander was Rosanna Clemente, another legend right out there, and good friend and bow buddy. And we didn't have any equipment. I had like 90 soldiers, and most of them were, I think I had like 3 NCOs and like 2 lieutenants and myself, right, and commander. And it was just great because even though we didn't have equipment, we were like doing glass house launchers, and we had cut out cardboards, the ECS, and the guys were back pushing cardboard buttons and stuff. And and Sergeant Major Lincoln, of course, he was the battalion CSM, so that was always a hoot. But yeah, I would go back to that time. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Fort Bragg, and the soldiers there. And I'd say I was able to get like 14 Echoes and 14 Tangos to airborne school, because we needed to fill seats, right? And so these kids out there, they would never have the opportunity to do that, and so they got to go out there and jump out of planes, and and a lot of them decided to go. A lot of them decided to leave the high med side. Someone went to SHORAD, and someone went on to infantry. But yeah, that was the absolute, and just being a first sergeant, right? Let's face it, the best rank in the world in the United States Army is first sergeant. You are the money maker, right? And you're right there. You have contact with soldiers every day. I always, the higher up you go, the less contact you have, right? And the contact you have is not going to be able to be followed up upon a lot. So yeah, being a first sergeant, my second job as a first sergeant wasn't my third. So I was HHB 108th Brigade first sergeant, then 3-4, and then I went HHB 32nd. Those HHBs they're different in a whole new world. But yeah, Alpha Battery 3-4, Captain Rosanna Clemente. I would even go back, even if Sergeant Major Lincoln was the battalion CSM again. So because Lincoln was a firecracker, right?
So Lincoln and I go way back. I'm an old 3rd to the 4th guy. Lincoln actually taught me the Avenger transition course. I left Jumpmaster School for 2 months and took the Avenger transition course. I say it was 2 months. It might have been 2 weeks. I really don't know. But it was a Avenger transition course. And Lincoln they had sent him to Bliss to learn. And then he came back and he taught all of us people about the Avenger. And I love Lincoln. Lincoln's supposed to do an interview with me. He keeps pushing me off, and I'm gonna beat him up. Yeah, right. Yeah, he's so humble. He's such a wonderful, wonderful guy. So, tell me a story. Tell me a story about one time when you said, "Uh-oh, I think I messed up." Was there a time when that happened?
So many times. Getting to where you go in life, if you make it to whatever you're doing, it takes an incredible amount of luck. It's hard work and luck, but there's so many things that there were the uh-oh moments out there. So go back to the time I was the first sergeant, 34. I had this soldier that kept on going AWOL. And so I decided that it would be a good idea that we put him in the supply cage, but that's false imprisonment. Okay. So, not a good idea when you're up there talking to 18th Airborne Corps commander about how you did that stuff. I was young, and I making stuff happen. So that's probably the worst, dumbest thing that I have ever done,
Okay, you got to tell me more about this. You got to tell me in detail. You got to tell the whole story. So you looked him in the eye and you said, "I'm locking you in here," and you walked away. You did that?
Well, no, I mean, I had a guard. We had MREs. We had water. We had a pail. He had an escort, right? Kid kept on going AWOL, and he would go out and sleep in a tent in the Mata Mile. This is funny because you know what I'm talking about, right? And so the 3rd or 4th time he would and we put him in the barracks room and he would crawl his window. And I just thought for his own safety and protection, because I didn't want him falling off that 3rd story and hurting himself. So I said, you know what, being the kind of leader I am, I'm going to take care of you and make sure that you get to all your appointments. And then we were able to, get him out of the Army. But not a good idea to do. And if there's any leaders out there, don't do that. Okay. And I hope there's. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. So you avoided a federal prosecution.
Yeah. It really was not. There was no intent to hurt the kid. You know what I mean? Like I really.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
You understand, right? You get that kid that's just like, man, I tell you what,
Heather Smith. I interviewed Heather Smith. She said that the biggest asset that she had as an NCO was corrective training. Right? She could help soldiers and I had soldiers that drank underage in Korea, and I made them stand like in dress uniform with a sign, no underage drinking, and I made that kind of thing. But a lock a soldier in the supply room.
We had a latrine. There was water. There was
but
it is false imprisonment.
It's like you say all this stuff, but it's like you had to stand in front of the post commander. It's like, yes, sir, it is false imprisonment. I agree.
Yeah. And he was gracious. He gave me one of the most epic chewings of the 4th point of contact I've ever had in my life. just hilarious, right? And then a lot of this
So,
stuff, it's stuff we did back in the day, right? You get a kid drinking and driving, you go down to the MP station, you give him the road guard vest and the flashlight, and you drive next to him back to the battery so you can give him counseling. Probably not a smart idea. This kid's already drunk, dehydrated, and you're like, hey, let's run 3 miles. Yeah, seemed
oh my gosh,
brilliant at the time, right? But
you're making me laugh so hard.
yeah, some of the stuff. I used to have this. So I had this wall of fame and wall of shame, right? So wall of fame was like kids doing great things, pictures up, certificates of achievement, whatever. And then wall of shame was like Article 15s, right? And yeah, the post IG didn't like that idea too much, but there's a bunch of things out there. You just you try to do the best you can. You make some mistakes along the way, but they come out to be epic stories in the end, right?
So were you like a partier in your younger days? Were you known to throw down? Like Burnley. Burnley was known to have combatives competitions in his backyard at Fort Bliss, right? Do you have any wild times?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we all did, and yeah, I used to party. I used to go out and hang out and drink with my friends and stuff. I still like to have people over and throw down. I stopped dancing the day I met my wife, so like I stopped going to clubs because after you meet the woman of your dreams, I'm convinced myself, anyways. For me, the only reason why I ever danced in my entire life was just try to meet somebody, a female, somebody I could live with. After that, I was done with it. Yeah, we used to do some crazy things back then, Some stuff I'm not going to talk about, right? But different army.
That's what I want to hear from you. That's the fun stuff, man. You got me laughing. My cheeks. I'm gonna have to push my cheeks down after we get done because I'm laughing the whole time.
Hey, get some Botox.
Tell me. Yeah, right. Tell me about what's your favorite uniform. Right, you wore a lot of uniforms. You used to shine black boots, right? Me and you, we used to shine boots together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the new uniform we have is fantastic, right? Now it doesn't, it's not like the old stuff. We don't iron it anymore, but it's just a very functional, uniform. It's very comfortable. I really like the pinks and greens or the AGSUs, the new Army Green Service uniform. To me, it looks fantastic. I thought for a while when they paneled the stuff, the cool thing about being a sergeant major at the 32nd is at a nominal level is you get to help the Army make decisions, I guess. You're not making decisions for the Army, but they do this thing and they'll ask all the nominative guys, Force Comp CSM, they'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And we all get to talk about it. And it's very, very open conversation. And then, sometimes the SMA will ask you the same thing. And when they first came out with the AGSU, I was like, I don't know. I think people are going to confuse us with the Marine Corps, right? Identity-wise, I still kind of like the dress blues. I'm glad we got rid of the old green ones. But yeah, I would say that the AGSU, there's a special place in my heart for BDUs, right? The starching them, spit shining your boots, just the pride and prestige of looking better as an NCO, just looking sharp, right? And the feeling of breaking starch in the morning, there's not a better feeling in the world, right?
Like breaking starch, it's weird to kind of think about and to talk to people about, but you would literally take these pants off of a hanger and insert your leg into it as if it was like it's breaking starch. It is, and it's crisp. It smells good. It is really and then you wrap those BDUs around and shove them down in your boots and tie it up and blouse them. Just so, dude, we thought we were sexy. We thought we were sexy back then, man. And watch out.
you go back and look at those old pictures. Everything's bloused right, and wearing your maroon beret. One time I was sitting at the AUSA convention with Sergeant Major Rowland, and we were sitting outside, and the busloads of the 82nd Airborne soldiers came in, and they're going off that bus with the maroon berets and stuff. And Rowland looks at me, he's like, "Nothing looks better than an airborne soldier. Jump boots and everything's highly shined. It's just, it's a fantastic thing, right?" Yep.
So did you go to airborne school?
Yeah, so I did go to airborne school, but unfortunately I didn't make it through. I got hurt. Rather not talk about it. But here's the thing, right? So I went to airborne school right after OSIT, and I did get hurt. I was supposed to go to Fort Rucker, Alabama right after that. And so instead, after recycling a couple of times, the PA, which was a warrant officer at that point in time, remember PAs used to be warrants back in the day, and they transitioned to officers. He's like, "Hey, look, so I actually chipped a bone on my kneecap, off my knee, on my second jump, right? And he's like, "You're not going to heal enough time." He's like, "Go to your next unit, and you can come back in 6 months." That's the first time I learned in my Army career, don't believe anything anybody tells you, because,
right.
But anyway, so I was supposed to go to Fort Rucker, Alabama, but because of that, I went to Panama, and, I was able to meet my wife. So, it was a great thing. And then when the opportunity arose for me to go again, it was just that point in time when I was a first sergeant, I was in 3-4, and I wanted to. Two things stopped me though, right? So I don't know if you were there in 3-4 when I was the 108th Brigade first sergeant, I came forward. But Colonel Underhill at the time, he told me one thing. He looked me dead in the eye. He's like, "Hey, you're my first sergeant. Your job is, when I get here, I'm gonna drive from Fort Bliss to Fort Bragg. I'm gonna walk in my office. I'm gonna put my CAT card in my computer, and I'm gonna go to war. I'm gonna be able to do my work." He said, "If you don't make that happen for everybody in the staff," he said that it's not gonna be good for you. And the second thing he said was, "And don't you go to airborne school," which sounds weird because of General Underhill, but he was like, he just wanted my focus to be, bringing in the soldiers and everything like that. So that was kind of hard. But, like I said, if it wasn't for that fact, here's a great story too. So, back in the day, so I went down to the orderly room in airborne school, right? And I was talking to the admin guy down there, some staff sergeant, and he's like, "Hey, look, there's 3 places we could send you," right? So one was Alaska, and I was like, "Alaska's way too cold." The other one was Germany, and I was like, "I don't know if I want to go. I don't know if I want to leave the United States," right? And the last one he said was Panama. I was like, "Hell yeah, I'll go to Florida." Thought he was sending me to Panama City, right? Needless to say, I got off the plane. It was not Florida, right? Remember, I'm a kid from Nebraska, man. Our Nebraska education. I thought everything below Texas was Mexico. I didn't have any concept, right?
Oh, that's great. I love it. Yeah, I'll go to Panama City, baby. That'd be woo.
Yeah, it's like, hell yeah, beaches. Yeah. It was still pretty good.
That's
though.
Right. That's right. So, yes. So tell me about ending your career. Tell me about deciding to retire. What was that like? What is it like to look around and say, "Okay, I've been doing this for a couple years now, and it's time to do something else."
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of emotions that get rolled up into that, right? It's sadness. Anybody's done this for 20 years. I think anybody that's done it for 10 years. I mean, that's a pretty significant portion of life. I've been in the Army longer than I was, out of the Army, right? So I had like 19 years as a civilian, and then 30 years as a soldier, and so that's always really difficult. I love the Army. I love air defense, and so that was another very difficult thing because you want to keep on, helping soldiers. You want to keep on progressing to get to a level where you could help soldiers out. And I just had come to a point in time. One thing I always told myself was, I'm going to be the leader that the Army needs, not the leader that needs the Army, right? And so I had a few job offers out there. I could have kept on interviewing, but the stuff that I was getting interviews for was like not, like a G3 someplace or something of that nature, right? And so how do you go out being the command sergeant major of the largest air defense unit in the free world, right? In the world period, with some of the best soldiers out there, tactical warfighting, people think that 32nd is a strategic, level headquarters. It's a tactical headquarters. It's like a division. It's set to go deploy and provide air defense expertise, through the 3 hats that the command general wears. And so, I decided last October I went to the nominative transition course down at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I was the last person in the last row because I was waiting for my wife to come. So I sat in the back, and the lady that did the transition, I'll never forget, it was kind of epiphany to me. But she's like, okay, I want everybody to say their name, their current unit, and what's next. And as they were going down the line, I was probably going to say the same thing everybody else was, but they're like, I'm Command Sergeant Major blah blah. I'm at this organization, and I'm waiting for what the Army has next. And as it went through 26 nominative sergeant majors, guys that were 4-star generals and 1-star generals and everything in between, I kind of started seeing the same thing. Everybody's like, "What's next?" And so, I kind of made my mind up. I was like, I'm going to retire. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Because it's sometimes you can't just keep on chasing the carrot, right? You got to make a decision for yourself and your family. And so my other decision was, I have my son who's 16 right now. I want him to be the one kid that goes to the same high school, right, from being a freshman to a senior, and able to graduate and build relationships and have the friends that I had when I was growing up. Because we don't give that to our kids, right? So they go from school to school to school. Jeanette and I, in 30 years, we've had 19 different houses. So think about, some of those were like, same installation moves for one reason or another. But when you move from the northeast of El Paso to Fort Bliss, you have to change schools, right? So your kids are paying, right? So, it's just a good point. I have a grandson. I can spend some time with him. I can, spend some time with my son, go watch him play, go watch his wrestling matches and be a part of his life, And the great thing is, for the last couple of months, I've been able to take my son to school every day when I'm here, pick him up from school. We're doing a hunter safety course, studying to do his driver's license. So we're going to go do some bird hunting at the end of the year. But it just came to the point where I've been focusing on, I focused on the 9,000, some almost 10,000 soldiers in 32nd for the last 3.5 years. And before that, the brigade and the battalion and the first sergeant and, all the way down to be a squad leader. And now I just want to focus. I just want to focus on my family now, So that was kind of the reason why I made the decision. But it is a rough and challenging place to be. And Will, it doesn't matter what rank you are, it doesn't matter. It's tough, right? So you go through, the whole range of emotions. And one thing I'll tell people out there is, don't do it alone. You may have your spouse, and that's great, but you need to, I can't tell you how many times I called Steve Burnley or John Wayne Foley or Eric McCrae. And I'm like, hey guys, and we go back and forth on stuff, and help me. And then some of the guys that retired, like, how did you deal with this? What was going through your head when what did you do? And so have your team, have a network, and I'll tell you, having a network is the most important thing. And the thing that if you retire from the Army and you don't have a solid network of people out there, you wasted your career, right? So. I tell you, I just got back from Florida yesterday or this morning. It seems like it was yesterday. I had a horrible. I have the worst luck with travel. I always get delayed and canceled. So last night I was like sleeping on the airport floor in DFW. It's just like, but I'm used to it right now. I've got like a pup tent that I bring with me. It's all good. But I was down in Florida. I was helping a buddy move down there, and then I called up one of my friends. It's like, hey, I'm in Florida. He's like, oh, hey, you know what? I got this job opening. And he came up and pitched. He's a recruiter. He pitched a job. Probably not. I might take it. I'm contemplating things, but there's so many. If you have the right network, it just makes transitioning so much easier.
Amen. I I've enjoyed hanging out with you tonight. It's been really cool. And as we think about like moving and closing this out, it's one of the things I was wondering is that one, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to maybe talk about?
Yeah.
But
Well, so
two, I would love to hear you like call your unit to attention. Like maybe think about maybe Alpha Battery, third of the fourth ADA, or I don't know, some old unit that you called to attention and then signed out. I would love to hear like ours. We love to hear our leaders call us to attention. We really do. So I don't know. I'll give you the last word to take us out.
yeah, so there's one story I want to tell. I think it's funny, and kind of a bit of karma. But when I was going through OSIT, I had this senior drill sergeant. There was a guy named Drill Sergeant Krasner, right? And this dude was mean. I'm telling you, 2 o'clock in the morning, bunks up and would just polish us all off for a good couple hours, and let's get like 30 minutes of sleep, and then so we could do our move to the next, to whatever range we were going to or whatever, you know. Joe Crasser, he was a tough guy. And years later, I'm a PLDC instructor. It's about 2003 or 4, right around there. And I had this young specialist come into my class, and his name's Chris Kratzner, Specialist Chris Kratzner. So I was like, hey, man, it's like, hey, was your dad in the infantry? He's like, yeah, yes, he was, sir. I was like, well, was he a drill sergeant? He's like, yes, he was a drill sergeant. So was he a drill sergeant at Fort Benning, Georgia in 1992? And he's like, absolutely, he was. And I was like, oh, man, karma, baby, this is beautiful, And then later on, he's like, I'm gonna give you, I got some payback to give you, right? And he's like, hey, Sergeant, or he's like, Sergeant, I dislike my dad too. He was mean, So, and I didn't want to give it to him too bad, but at the end of the time, what I always tell everybody out there, is that as air defenders, we gotta be proud. We gotta be proud. We're war fighters, most deployed units of the United States Army, hands down. And they don't get a lot of the same resources that everybody else gets out there. You go to BCTs, they got embedded behavioral health, they got all these different tools at their disposal, right? And when we did this pulse of force and they did the survey, they compared us to some BCTs and divisions out there, and we were about the same as the divisions of BCT. So I told a certain senior leader out there, I was like, hey, I said, and he was asking me what the challenge was, and I said, I don't really see a challenge. We're doing as good as these units that have all this embedded help in the formation, but we're doing it without it. And what that tells me is that our leaders in air defense are pretty damn good. They're doing the same work, but sometimes better than those units that are fully to get all the lickies and chewies, right? And so that's what I'll leave everybody on that note with. If you go to bed tonight, whether you're retired or you're still serving, be proud to be an air defense soldier. Be proud to be a soldier, period, right? And we need to start building our team up instead of, everybody talking smack about air defense. We're the only branch out there that does that. It's a self-hate thing. I don't know what it's all about. So I'll leave you on that note. As far as the calling everybody attention, as I'll leave it as I did on the parade field, 32nd, with command, attention. Blackjack 7 signing out. How about that?
I love it.
All right, bro.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Look, Jerry Jacobitz, everybody. Jake Jacobitz. I love it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's been a blessing. You are look, Gibbon, Plotnick, Christ, Albright, Pierce, Butler, Ross, Gutierrez, all these people have commented on our stream tonight and watched us. We currently have actually people here watching us, and I really appreciate it. I'd like to sign off. Thanks, everybody. I love you. Jake Jacobitz, everybody. You're the man. I love you, man. Signing off, everybody.
Bye.